Namaste. So, the last few videos have been about the dvaita and Viśuddhi-cakra levels of the path. We're introducing gradually the terminology of the Sri Vidya given in the Lalita Sahasranamam and also in the Mahatmya Khanda of the Tripura Rahasya. So gradually we're building toward a comprehensive understanding of the path of Sri Vidya, all the way from the religious level to the Advaita level. The Vivartha-vāda level is something we have kind of glossed over. But there's sufficient material on this channel, especially the Secret of the Golden Flower and a lot of the Buddhist-oriented videos I've done in the past that cover that. So the difficulty for most people is in switching contexts. In other words, we're talking about the same thing in these other videos, but we're talking about it from the perspective of the Buddha's teaching, either the Southern Buddhism or the Eastern Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism. So that's why I'm calling this the Gateless Gate. I want to talk a little bit about the higher levels of the path, the above Viśuddhi-cakra, the Vivartha-vāda level. So Vivarta means appearance. And this appearance refers to the material world, the phenomenal world, the empirical self, and the world experienced through the senses. That in the higher levels, where real meditation begins, one has to start from the premise that this phenomenal world is simply an appearance. Well, isn't it? We talked about how the goddess, the Shakti, Devi, Tripura, is consciousness. That before she is emanated by Shiva, there is no consciousness. There's only awareness, pure, objectless awareness, with no change, no boundaries. But this is impossible to talk about. In fact, even the Vivarta level is very difficult to talk about because we're talking about basically the end of the mind, the end of personality, of individuality. And a lot of people are afraid of this because it feels like death, but it's only death to the ego, to the false I, the false ego, ahankar. The real ego, the real I, is the I, as described by Ramana. So Ramana talks about I, as being the self that is aware of itself, with a capital S, self with a capital S. That is not the ego. That is not the mind, and certainly not any of the five bodies. The food body, the energy body, the mind body, the intelligence body, or even the bliss body. One has to go beyond bliss. The Secret of the Golden Flower technique is very good for experiencing bliss. But if one gets hung up on bliss, then all advancement grinds to a halt. Oh yeah, bliss, it's great. In the rainbow community in the United States, if somebody just wants to sit around and meditate and bliss out, they call it a bliss bunny. That one should not simply get stuck in the bliss. One should continue to work for further advancement and also to continue to gather punya. You see, it's not that when one graduates from karma yoga to bhakti, he gives up karma yoga. No. karma yoga continues. But bhakti is added as another layer. And similarly, when one graduates from bhakti to Raja-yoga at the Vivartha-vāda level, one doesn't give up bhakti. Huh? A really ridiculous idea. But people think like that. They think, oh yes, now I'm a meditator. I don't need any of these rituals anymore. I don't need to have a deity or an Ishtadevata anymore. I don't need to develop love for God, because none of that really exists. It's only an appearance. Well, it's only an appearance to one who is fully intelligent. But to the body and to the mind, they are real. So the problem with just jumping up to the platform of Vivartha-vāda and trying to enter meditation without doing any of the prior steps or giving up the previous steps is that one neglects the body, the heart, and the mind. These things need to be fed. I think of the body as a pet, like a pet animal. It needs to be fed, watered, cleaned up, taken care of, taken for walks, exercise, and other health issues. Because the body is the foundation on which meditation has to take place. Same with the mind. If the mind is disturbed, filled with negative thoughts or desires, then meditation can't happen. Mind has to be cleaned up too. So this is all the foundation or the prerequisites for actual meditation. Now, what about meditation? Assuming that we still have a nice practice of karma yoga and bhakti yoga, then when we get to Raja-yoga, well, what does that look like? Well, usually it means sitting down in a quiet, sanctified place. What does sanctified mean? Clean. And also which has been prepared by proper performance of rituals. That is, vibrations related to God and the Absolute have to be continuously generated to sanctify this place, to remove all negative influences. And that's why the ancient sages lived in the forest or the mountains, far away from human habitations. Of course, this is a very austere life, and most people can't do it nowadays. But as far as possible, one has to create a sacred place for meditation. That means doing the rituals of karma yoga, doing the performances of bhakti yoga, love for God, spontaneous mood. And then one is assured that these things won't become distractions. The body, the heart, the mind are all clean and pure. So then one can sit down and begin usually with a mantra. In the Sri Vidya tradition, we have several mantras. The Siddhi mantra, the Bala mantra, and the Shodashi mantra. And these are all given by the Guru. They cannot be taken. Try to understand. They have to be given. And one of the main reasons for that is that these mantras incorporate elements of astrological calculation. That, in other words, they're different for different people, depending on the sign of their birth and the nakshatra of their birth. And these are things that are missing in the Western conception. It's not like, what was it? TM? Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He gave 4 different mantras, depending on what your sun sign was. So sun sign astrology is completely messed up. Don't use it. But Vedic astrology goes by the sign of the rising at the time of birth. This is called lagna. And the sign of the moon at birth is called nakshatra. There are 27 nakshatras, or moon signs. Depending on where the moon is positioned at the time of birth, depending on the constellation that's rising at the time of birth, then the Siddhi mantra and the other mantras are calculated by that. So these mantras have to be given by someone knowledgeable, by someone skilled, by someone with insight, see? Not just read from a book. Any mantras you get from a book is not going to work that well. It might be a start. Like some of the mantras, the 12-syllable mantra, the 10-syllable mantra, 16-syllable mantra, and so on, can be found in books. But that's not the same as getting it from a guru. There was a nice story that Ramana Maharshi told, that a king visited his minister, and the minister was practicing the Gayatri mantra, 24.5-syllable mantra. And so the king actually had to wait, because nothing is more sacred, nothing is more important than the Gayatri. So when the minister came out, the king asked him, "Can you give me the Gayatri mantra? I want to do this too." And the minister said, "No, I'm not qualified. I can't give it." So the king says, "Well, what do you mean? You know the mantra. Just give it to me. Tell me what it is, and I'll start practicing it." And so the minister said, "Well, let me try to show you what I'm talking about." And of course, being in the royal palace, there was a guard on the door. So he says, "Guard, arrest the king." The guard looked at him like, "What? What are you talking about?" And he said again, "Guard, arrest the king right now." And now the king's getting pissed off. He says, "This is nonsense. Guard, arrest the minister." And immediately the guard grabs the minister and holds him, right? And so the minister laughs. He said, "See, this is the difference. The mantra can be given by one who has the authority, just as the order to seize someone can only be given by one with authority." The king understood that very well, being a political man. So one must go to a guru with the authority to give the mantra. Just taking it from a book or copying it from a video, it doesn't really work that well, although maybe it's a start, you know. But you must find a mantra guru. You must find a diksha guru, someone who can give you the mantra with authority, someone who has realized the mantra. So that's the first thing. Then, the idea of chanting the mantra is simply to get rid of all the other thoughts in the mind, that one becomes completely focused on the mantra alone. That is a step toward having a completely empty mind, a mind with no thoughts at all. From many thoughts, we reduce down to one thought, the mantra. And then finally the mantra evaporates as well, and we're left with an empty mind. Now, this is very scary to a lot of people, because again, it feels like death, that, oh, my mind is going. And one comes to the void when the concentration is sufficient. And the void, it looks, this is where our number 0 comes from. In meditation, when one reaches the void, it's like all the light that you've been seeing, all the wonderful, colorful forms and stuff that you've been seeing in meditation, they kind of go away to the side. And all that's left is this black hole with nothing. The first time you encounter it, it's really scary. Terrifying, some people call it. But I always knew I've got to go in there. I've got to find out what's there. And of course, by entering into the void, you completely go beyond the mind, beyond any concept of a personal identity or individuality. What to speak of bodies? I mean, you left the concept of a body long ago. Because the meditation goes just as it's described by Patanjali. First comes yama niyama. These are the fundamentals, the conditions for meditation. Then asana. Asana means sitting. Then pranayama, controlling the breath. Not that the breath has to be controlled. It has to be allowed to settle, to become very fine and slow. Then what? Pratyahara, withdrawal of the mind from the senses. After pratyahara, dharanya, concentration. And finally, dhyana, or real meditation. And where does dhyana lead? Samadhi. See, these are the 8 steps, the 8 angas. People talk about Ashtanga yoga, but then they only teach asana. What's that? Ek-anga yoga. But Ashtanga yoga, 8 limbs, mean yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. All 8 limbs have to be there, or it's not really yoga. So it's a big fraud as far as I'm concerned. People are teaching so-called yoga, but they're only teaching 1 or at most 2 of the 8 limbs of yoga as given by Patanjali. Other teachers have stated it differently, but the same intent is there. In the Buddha's teaching, for example, one tries to observe the mind minutely and see how it synthesizes the idea of I, the individual ego, and overlays that on top of all the other perceptions. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. And you realize, oh, this whole thing is nonsense. And you lose interest in the mind. You stop giving the mind any credibility because you see that every thought in the mind is basically synthetic. Only the perceptions coming through the senses are real. And even those are conditioned by the body, the type of birth you have, the environmental conditions around you, and so on. So by setting aside all of these things, one reaches the void. And then one should enter into the void. And after some time, something wonderful will happen. What happened to me in 1984 is that Shakti appeared to me. Well, actually, she didn't appear. I couldn't see her, but I sure could feel her presence. Very strong feminine presence. And then she gave me Shaktipat. And suddenly I could see everything. I could see Brahman. So these experiences come when one has prepared the ground. You cannot do samadhi. Samadhi comes to you. You cannot do enlightenment. Enlightenment comes to you when you are ready, when you have prepared the ground, when you have purified yourself by means of karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and Rāja-yoga practice. And only then do you actually realize the real nature of the self, which is Brahman, Shivam. Aum Tat Sat. Aum Harihi Aum.